The transition from the clinical, marble coldness of Silas Thorne's penthouse to the sprawling, cedar-scented chaos of the Blackwood estate was like stepping from a morgue into a forest fire. Rowan lay on the back seat of the SUV, his breath hitching in shallow, jagged rhythms. Every bump in the mountain road sent a spike of dull ache through his lower abdomen. It wasn't just physical pain, it was the severing. An Omega's bond to their Alpha is a living thread, and Silas had wrapped that thread around Rowan's throat until he was choking. Tearing it away to flee felt like ripping skin from bone. 5 minutes, Ro. Just 5 minutes, Remy whispered from the driver's seat. Remy was the seventh brother, the one closest to Rowan in age. His scent, usually a bright, playful citrus, was currently sharp and acrid like burnt orange peels. He was terrified, but his hands were steady on the wheel. He had been the one to find the bruises on Rowan's wrists 3 days ago. He had been the one to coordinate the extraction while Silas was at a gala, shaking hands with senators who had no idea he went home to a mate he kept under lock and key. The SUV cleared the final ridge, and the Blackwood Manor loomed ahead. It wasn't a house. It was a fortress of dark stone and ancient oak, nestled in a valley where the cellular signal died and the law of the city held no weight. As the car skidded to a halt on the gravel, the front doors of the manor didn't just open. They were thrown wide by a force of nature. Castle, the eldest and the alpha prime of the Blackwood line, descended the stairs. He didn't wait for the car to fully stop. He reached the door, ripped it open, and the sheer volume of his scent, heavy, dominant cedar and rain-drenched earth, flooded the cabin. For an Omega in distress, it was better than morphine. Out, Castle commanded, his voice a low vibration that Rowan felt in his very marrow. "He's bleeding a little, Cass," Remy choked out, his voice cracking. "I think, the stress, the bond breaking." Castle didn't waste breath on words. He reached into the back seat, his massive arms sliding under Rowan's knees and back with a gentleness that defied his terrifying stature. As he lifted Rowan, the younger man let out a broken whimper, burying his face in Castle's neck. "Quiet, little bird," Castle grunted, tucking Rowan's head under his chin. "You're behind the line now. He can't see you. He can't scent you. You are ours again." The healer's touch. Inside, the manor was alive with the low-frequency hum of alpha growls and the frantic clicking of keyboards. Rowan was carried past the grand fireplace into a wing of the house that had been converted into a medical suite. Elias, the third brother and the Pax Beta doctor, was already snapping on latex gloves. His scent was the most neutral, sterile linen and chamomile, which was exactly what Rowan needed to keep from spiraling into a pheromone-induced panic. "Lay him down. Castle, stay by his head. He needs the alpha anchor," Elias directed, his voice calm and clinical. Rowan felt the soft leather of the examination table. He felt the cold air hit his stomach as Elias lifted his shirt to reveal the pale, slightly distended curve of his belly. At 4 months, the pup was starting to make its presence known, a small life caught in the middle of a Titan's war. "The pup," Rowan gasped, his fingers clutching at Castle's heavy wool coat. "Silas, he said if I left, the pup wouldn't survive the separation. He said I was killing it. Silas Thorne is a politician, Rowan. He lies for a living," Elias said, pressing a cool ultrasound transducer to Rowan's skin. "A pup doesn't need a biological father who terrifies its mother. It needs a stable pack. It needs us." The room fell silent as a rhythmic thump-thump, thump-thump filled the air. The heartbeat. It was fast, echoing the mother's distress, but it was strong. "See that?" Elias pointed to the screen, where a small, flickering shape rested. "That's a Blackwood heart. It doesn't break easily." Rowan let out a sob of pure, unadulterated relief. But the peace was short-lived. The wall of shadows. A heavy thud echoed from the hallway, followed by the sound of a fist hitting a wall. Jace and Kale, the twins, entered the room. They were the enforcers, identically tall, scarred, and radiating a level of aggression that made the air feel thick. Finn's picked up 3 black SUVs crossing the county line, Kale said, his eyes fixed on Rowan with a mix of leonine protectiveness and murderous rage. "Thorne's private security. They're fast. They're trespassing. Jace added, a dark smile tugging at his lips. Castle, give us the word. We got the perimeter rigged. They won't even see the sensors until their axles are snapped. Castle looked down at Rowan. The youngest brother looked so small, swallowed by the medical equipment and the heavy shadows of the room. Rowan was shaking, his scent turning sour with a fear response that typically summoned an alpha to claim or punish. No traps yet, Castle decided, his voice steel. We let them reach the gate. I want them to see exactly what they're up against. Soren, the fifth brother and the diplomat, stepped out of the shadows of the corner. He was dressed in a suit that cost more than the SUV Remy had driven, his hair perfectly slicked back. He was the only one who looked like he belonged in Silas Thorne's world, which made him the most dangerous. I've already filed the sanctuary injunction with the High Council, Soren said, tapping a fountain pen against his chin. Legally, Silas cannot step foot on this property without a peacekeeper present. If he does, he forfeits his right to the Thorne estate. I've messaged his lawyers. They're screaming, of course. And if he doesn't care about the law? Rowan asked, his voice trembling. The brothers all looked at each other. A silent communication passed between them. A pact bond so old it predated the city's concrete towers. Then, Finn's voice came over the intercom from his tech den upstairs. We hope he likes the taste of dirt, because that's the only thing he'll be leaving with. The nesting begins. By midnight, the immediate threat of the SUVs had stalled at the gate. Silas's men had seen the twins standing on the stone pillars, rifles slung over their shoulders, and decided that their paychecks weren't high enough to storm a Blackwood stronghold. But the internal battle was just beginning. Rowan was moved to the master nest, a sunken living area filled with hundreds of pillows, weighted blankets, and the discarded clothing of all 7 brothers. In Omegaverse dynamics, scenting is the only way to stabilize a pregnant Omega whose bond has been damaged. One by one, the brothers entered the nest to contribute. Remy brought a soft, worn-out hoodie that smelled like the outdoors. He curled up at Rowan's feet, acting as a heat source. Elias brought a heated compress for Rowan's aching back, staying long enough to ensure the distress scent was fading. Even the twins, usually too restless for nesting, dropped off heavy leather jackets that smelled of wood smoke and gun oil, creating a protective ring around the perimeter of the blankets. Finally, Castle entered. He had shed his coat, his broad shoulders stretching the fabric of his black t-shirt. He sat at the center of the nest and pulled Rowan into his lap. He's going to come himself, isn't he? Rowan whispered into the dark, his hand resting on his stomach. Silas won't let a vessel walk away. Let him come, Castle said, his hand covering Rowan's, his palm large enough to shield both the boy and the unborn pup. He thinks he's an alpha because he owns a city. He's about to find out that a real alpha doesn't own anything. He protects everything. Rowan finally closed his eyes, lulled by the 7-layered scent of his family. For the first time in months, the pup kicked. Not a sharp, stress jab, but a soft, fluttering movement. It was a greeting. They were home. But outside, the storm was just beginning to gather. Silas Thorne did not lose, and he certainly did not share. The fever hit at 3 a.m., a jagged, unnatural heat that felt less like an illness and more like a physical invasion. In the Omegaverse, the mated bond is not merely a social contract. It is a biological tether. When an alpha like Silas Thorne, possessive, dominant, and steeped in the old ways of command, is separated from his pregnant mate, the bond doesn't just go quiet. It screams. Rowan lay in the center of the master nest, his skin slick with sweat. His scent, usually a soft, milky vanilla, had curdled into something sharp and metallic. He was bond-sick. Silas was using the psychic link, broadcasting a relentless, pulsing command across the miles. Come back. Submit. Belong to me. No. Rowan whimpered, his fingers digging into the heavy wool blankets Remy had brought. No, stop it. He's spiking Elias. Remy's voice was frantic. He was crouched at the edge of the nest, afraid to touch Rowan and accidentally trigger a rejection seizure. Elias burst into the room, his medical bag skidding across the hardwood. Behind him loomed Castle, whose own alpha scent had thickened into a protective musk so dense it practically shimmered in the dim lamplight. "It's a phantom call," Elias muttered, pressing a cool cloth to Rowan's forehead. Silas is trying to force a recall response. He knows Rowan is weak because of the pregnancy. He's trying to break his will from the city. "Can we block it?" Castle growled. His eyes were glowing a low, dangerous amber, a sign that his own inner alpha was rising to challenge the intruder in Rowan's head. "Only with a counter-scenting," Elias said, looking up at his eldest brother. "But it has to be all of us. We have to drown out Silas's frequency with the pack frequency. If we don't, the stress will cause the placenta to detach. He'll lose the pup by sunrise." The ritual of the pack. One by one, the 7 brothers took their places around the nest. This wasn't just comfort anymore. It was a biological war. Finn, the tech genius, sat at the head. He didn't have the muscle of the twins, but his mind was a fortress. He placed his cool, thin hands on Rowan's temples. "Focus on my voice, Ro," he whispered. "Don't listen to the static. I've jammed his signals outside. Now you have to jam them inside." Jace and Kale, the twins, sat on either side of Rowan's hips. They didn't speak. They simply let their aggressive, peppermint Angan smoke scents flare to their maximum output, creating a ring of fire that Silas's cold ozone scent couldn't penetrate. Soren, the diplomat, held Rowan's hand. His touch was firm, a reminder of the legal and social walls he was building to keep Rowan safe. Castle took the most vital position. He lay down behind Rowan, pulling the younger man's shaking body against his broad chest. He bared his neck, pressing his scent glands, the most potent part of an alpha, directly against Rowan's naping spot. "Listen to my heart, Rowan," Castle commanded, his voice a low, rhythmic rumble. "Silas is a ghost. He's a shadow in a suit. You're a Blackwood. You are the earth, the trees, and the stone. He cannot move stone." For an hour, the room was silent except for the heavy breathing of 8 men. Slowly, the metallic scent of Rowan's fear began to dissolve. The vanilla returned, bolstered by the cedar of Castle, the citrus of Remy, and the chamomile of Elias. The fever broke with a sudden, shivering gasp. Rowan's eyes snapped open, the haze of Silas's influence finally shattering like glass. He's gone." Rowan breathed, his voice hoarse. "I can't hear him anymore." "He's not gone," Castle muttered, his grip tightening protectively. "He's just realized that the front door is locked. Now he's going to try to kick it down." The recovery warrant. The sun had barely crested the valley's pines when the perimeter alarms began to chime on Finn's tablet. 3 vehicles, Finn announced, his fingers flying across his keyboard as he brought up the drone feeds. 2 black SUVs and a white sedan with a government seal. He brought a council mediator. "Smart bastard," Soren said, adjusting his tie in the mirror. He looked perfectly composed, though the way his jaw was set betrayed his lethal intent. "He's using the wellness check loophole. He's claiming Rowan was kidnapped or is mentally unstable due to pregnancy-induced hysteria." "Let them in," Castle said, standing up and smoothing his shirt. "But only to the gatehouse. Nobody crosses the gravel." Rowan tried to stand, but his legs were like water. "I want to be there. If he sees me, if he sees I'm not afraid." "No," Elias said firmly, pushing him back into the blankets. "You stay in the nest. The pup needs your cortisol levels down. Remy, stay with him. If anyone gets past us, you take him to the cellar bunker." Remy nodded, his hand resting on the hilt of a hunting knife tucked into his belt. He was the heart of the family, but even the heart has teeth. The standoff at the gate. The air at the edge of the property was cold and biting. Castle, Soren, and the twins stood in a line across the private road, a wall of Blackwood muscle that made the arriving security guards look like toy soldiers. The white sedan door opened, and a thin, gray-haired man in a sterile gray suit stepped out. This was the mediator. But behind him, the SUV door opened, and Silas Thorne emerged. Silas was the picture of alpha perfection. His suit was bespoke, his hair immaculate, and his scent, cold, sharp, and demanding, preceded him like a physical blow. He didn't look like a villain. He looked like a king coming to reclaim a lost treasure. Castle, Silas said, his voice smooth and devoid of emotion. You're looking well. A bit dusty out here in the woods, isn't it? You're trespassing, Silas, Castle replied, his arms crossed. State your business and leave. I'm here for my mate, Silas said, stepping forward until he was inches from the property line. He's in a delicate condition. He was taken from our home in the middle of the night. I have a court-ordered recovery warrant. Rowan is to be remanded to a high-security medical facility for the duration of his term. Soren stepped forward, holding up a digital tablet. And I have a sanctuary declaration signed by the High Alpha of the Northern Territories. Under Article 14, an omega of a founding line may seek shelter with their birth pack if they feel their primary bond is predatory. The Blackwood line is older than your political party, Silas. Our laws still hold. Silas's eyes flickered to Soren, a flash of genuine hatred crossing his face. He's carrying my heir. That child is a Thorne. That child is a Blackwood. Jace chimed in, his hand resting conspicuously on his holster. And if you want to check the DNA, you can wait 5 more months. Until then, you aren't getting past the gate. The mediator cleared his throat nervously. Mr. Thorne, the Blackwoods are within their legal rights for a 48-hour cooling period. Unless the Omega himself comes to the gate and asks to leave, I cannot authorize a forced entry. Silas looked past the brothers, toward the distant manor house. He inhaled deeply, trying to catch a whiff of Rowan's scent. But Finn had been busy. The industrial fans at the manor were pumping out scent maskers that made the entire valley smell like nothing but pine and rain. Rowan, Silas roared, his voice amplified by his alpha command. Rowan, come out. You are hurting the baby. You are being selfish. Back in the manor, Rowan flinched as the sound echoed through the speakers Finn had set up. But he didn't run. He looked at Remy, who was holding his hand. He's lying, Rowan whispered. He's terrified, Remy corrected. Because for the first time in his life, he's realized that his money can't buy a Blackwood's loyalty. The first breach. Silas realized the law wouldn't help him today. He turned back to his SUV, but before he closed the door, he looked at Castle. You think you can protect him forever? Silas asked quietly. I own the roads. I own the hospitals. I own the power lines that feed this house. You might have the trees, Castle, but I have the world. I'll give you 24 hours to hand him over. After that, I stop being a politician. As the vehicles sped away, kicking up dust, Castle didn't move. He waited until the sound of the engines died out. Finn, Castle said into his earpiece. Yeah, Cass. Switch to the generators. Cut the external lines ourselves before he can do it. And Jace, Kale, get the dogs. We're going to full perimeter lockdown. The war had officially begun. The world beyond the Blackwood estate had effectively ceased to exist. By the 3rd day of the standoff, Silas Thorne had made good on his promise. The power lines snaking up the mountain had been cut, leaving the manor to hum on the deep, rhythmic thrum of its underground diesel generators. The satellite internet was jammed, replaced by a wall of digital static that only Finn could pierce with his encrypted shortwave radio. Inside, the atmosphere was a pressurized mix of domesticity and war room tension. The master nest had expanded. It now took up half the great hall, a sprawling landscape of velvet, wool, and the protective scents of 7 brothers. Rowan sat in the center of it, his fingers tracing the delicate embroidery of a baby blanket Remy had found in the attic, a relic from their own mother's time. His bump was more pronounced now, a hard, high curve that seemed to pulse with its own defiant life. But Rowan was pale. The bond-sick fever had left him, but it had been replaced by a heavy, soul-deep exhaustion. He's too quiet, Elias whispered to Castle by the fireplace. The doctor was cleaning a set of surgical tools, the metallic clink the only sound in the room. The pup is healthy, but Rowan's body is behaving like it's under siege. His blood pressure is climbing. If we don't get his stress levels down, he'll go into premature labor. And we can't take him to a city hospital, Castle. Silas owns the triage floors. Castle looked toward the window, where the first dusting of mountain snow was beginning to cling to the glass. He stays here. We make this place the hospital, the shadows and the trees. while the interior of the house was a sanctuary of soft blankets and hushed voices. The perimeter was a gauntlet. Jace and Kale, the twins, had moved their base of operations to the Eagle's Nest, a reinforced stone turret that overlooked the only winding road up the cliffside. They didn't look like brothers anymore. They looked like twin specters of vengeance. They wore tactical gear, their scent suppressed by neutralizing sprays so they could blend into the frozen woods. Movement. Sector 4. Jace murmured into his comms, his eye pressed to the thermal scope of his rifle. I see them, Kale replied from the opposite ledge. 3 men. Not council police. Private contractors. Look at the way they move. Low center of gravity, specialized mountain gear. Silas irat profesionals. The intruders were moving up the blind man's path, a treacherous set of natural stone stairs that led to the manor's rear service entrance. They were fast, silent, and carrying scent grenades, devices designed to overload an alpha's senses and paralyze a pack with artificial pheromones. Do we take the shot? Kale asked, his finger tightening on the trigger. No. Castle's voice crackled in their ears. We don't give Silas the legal high ground of a body count. Not yet. Use the hound. Jace grinned, a flash of white teeth in the dark. He tapped a command into his wrist-mounted tablet. From the kennels hidden in the tree lean, from massive Blackwood wolfhounds, beasts bred for generations to recognize only the family scent, were released. They didn't bark. They were silent hunters. The thermal feed showed the 3 contractors stopping dead as 4 150-pound shadows emerged from the pines. The lead contractor reached for a sidearm, but Kale fired a single warning shot that shattered the stone inches from the man's hand. That was the only polite gesture you're getting today. Jace's voice boomed through the external PA system, echoing off the valley walls. Turn around and tell Silas Thorne that the next thing we drop won't be a bullet. It'll be the mountain itself. The contractors didn't argue. They retreated into the fog, chased by the low, guttural growls of the hounds. The internal breach. Back inside, the stress of the perimeter breach had reached Rowan. He didn't need to hear the gunshots. He could feel the shift in his brother's sense. The pack bond was vibrating with aggression, and to a pregnant Omega, that aggression felt like a storm. I can't breathe, Rowan gasped, clutching at his chest. Remy was by his side in a second, pulling him upright. Easy, Ro. It's okay. The twins handled it. Nobody is coming inside. It's not them, Rowan choked out, his eyes wide and unfocused. It's the pup. It's too heavy. It feels like Silas is pulling again. Elias dropped his tools and rushed over. He pressed a hand to Rowan's abdomen and cursed. Contractions. Braxton Hicks, hopefully, but they're too regular. Rowan, I need you to look at me. But Rowan wasn't looking at Elias. He was looking at the grand staircase. Soren, the diplomat, was descending the stairs, his face deathly pale. He was holding a satellite phone, the one Finn had rigged for emergency council-only calls. Castle, Soren said, his voice trembling for the first time in his life. The High Council just issued an exigent circumstances bypass. Silas convinced them that Rowan is being held in a cult-like environment and that his life is in immediate danger due to lack of professional medical care. They've authorized a tactical extraction. The peacekeepers are coming, Castle, and they're coming with Silas. The room went cold. The peacekeepers were the elite alpha unit of the council, men trained specifically to dismantle pack strongholds. They weren't mercenaries, they were the law. When Castle asked, his voice a low, terrifying rumble. 2 hours, Soren replied. They're flying in by heavy-lift helicopter. They won't use the road. They're coming for the roof. The architects gamble. Finn emerged from his tech den, his eyes bloodshot from days of coding. They think they're coming for the roof. Fine. Let them have the roof. Finn, what are you talking about? Remy asked, holding a shaking Rowan.